Brahms, mate, what are you doing? You've picked the worst possible time to come out of the walls. We've got about 2 months left of viral quarantine before we're allowed outside again, so it's probably best if you just get back inside, eh?
Alright, buckle in.
I think you're probably going to need a stiff drink for this one. Major spoilers ahead, but if you cared about spoilers for Brahms the Boy 2, then God have mercy on your soul. Brahms the Boy 2 is the latest edition of confusingly titled horror blockbusters and the pinnacle of sequels made by people who have never watched the first film. Despite being made by the director of the first film, Brahms the Boy 2 follows the special relationship between a child and his new friend Brahms the doll, which was found buried in the woods despite being completely smashed to literal dust in the first film. But now, he's back.
In pod form.
The real question here is not how, but rather why. Well, how is also something I'd like to explore, because the entire premise of the film is also a hot mess.
So, weirdly enough, this was one of our most anticipated films of the year. Not for any good reasons. We both watched the first one, and then it was only when the trailer for this one came out that we realised we have to see it. The first one is awful. Its only really redemption is the twist that's actually kind of interesting, but it still doesn't save the film. It's awful. So this one, they came out with Brahms the Boy 2. When I saw that Brahms trailer, there was 3 things I immediately thought. First of all, why did they make this? Like, how did it get a sequel? The first one was awful. 2, why is it called Brahms? I don't know if anybody remembers that he was called Brahms in the first one. And then 3, how? They completely changed the law, so it just makes complete no sense, this second trailer, so we had to watch it. Why did they make this?
I think we know why they made it, because obviously it's quite the cash grab. They made it because they capitalised on the success of the first film, which did rather well.
Yeah, I think everybody... it did better than they were expecting.
Yeah, I think it did wildly better than they were expecting.
The director hasn't really done much, and I don't think he wanted to come back for their second one, because I think he just threw it out, and then it clearly did better than they thought. So the studios rang him up and been like, we'll give you a ton of money, come back and do the second one. And he couldn't say no. So he just kind of, because his other films aren't great, so I think he just kind of threw this one together.
That's why it was so mind-blowingly special when I first saw that trailer drop. I couldn't believe that they made a second one. The one thing that was sticking out for me was how, because the way that the story's framed in the first one, it kind of gets tied up by the end. There is actually a scene from the first film showing Brahms repairing the doll, but the studio simply repurposed the moment for the boy too, so it was actually Joe. The fact that there's a sequel that is related to the first film, but not really related to the first film.
I think that leads into the second point now, is it's called Brahms. Which, when I saw that, I didn't even remember the guy's name from the first one. It's not like Annabelle, where you remember that. This was just like, Brahms. It's good job they put the little colon, the boy 2, underneath it, lest I'd have no idea what it was.
They should have just called it The Boy 2. I don't understand why they went so vague with the first title to get you enticed with a creepy doll movie about the boy, and then they make something that's got even less substance than the first film. They could have got away with just calling it The Boy 2, but instead they went with the title of Brahms The Boy 2, which is weird because now the title is backwards, the subtitle is the main title. So if you haven't seen The Boy 1, the story basically runs a little something like this. Woman comes to country mansion to work for a man and a woman to babysit their child, but it turns out their child is actually a doll by the name of Brahms. She spends most of the film looking after this doll, and creepy things start happening as if the doll is alive. Fast forward to the end of the film. Turns out the doll isn't supernatural at all, which is what we were led to believe. The real boy Brahms is living inside the walls of the house and has been manipulating the doll as if he was actually there.
Yeah, been living there for like 30 years in the walls. It was a really good twist at the time. Like, as much as I think the film's terrible, I thought the twist was pretty decent, and I thought it was interesting.
It was the redeeming factor of the film, because I spent a lot of time with the film laughing and pointing out things very odd with it. Why somebody would be willing to stay around a doll that long with such a stupid premise of babysit this doll and we pay for you.
I know, but you got free money. You're not going to say no to that, are you?
Anyway, Brahms is real, and by the end of it, there's a big fight scene, and Brahms gets stabbed and seemingly collapses. The woman escapes. End of the film. Then the Boy 2 trailer drops, which completely undermines everything that we've saw from the first film.
I haven't seen a film do this that's completely changed the whole first film. It's really weird. Like, they do this with Annabelle, which has always really pissed me off, is that sometimes they act like Annabelle is... Like, they act like Annabelle's scary because it's haunted, but it's not what it is. The doll doesn't do anything. The doll's literally just a doll. The thing that is Annabelle is a demon that holds the doll and just, runs around with it.
The doll doesn't scare me because the doll's an inanimate object. There's not everybody keeps thinking like Annabelle has it. It's not. Yeah. There's a demon that surrounds Annabelle.
That's what's scary. But in the Conjuring and Annabelle films, they also mix that up as well. They forget their own rules. And this is exactly the same thing again.
So imagine our surprise during Brahms' The Boy 2 trailer when roaches come flying out of Brahms' mouth.
Yeah, they did it like a stupid supernatural doll, which is not at all what he was. They already did the reveal of what Brahms is in the first one. Why name this one Brahms and carry on the story?
Carry on the story of a doll that was never supernatural all along.
It's just an example of studios seeing the success of something and then going, we need more. We need a sequel. We need one now. And then just fitting the narrative around that. Just hoping the audience is stupid enough to forget everything they just saw in the first one. It's the most blatant, lazy cash grab.
We were actually looking through some of the older trailers for The Boy 1 just to try and collect some footage and remind ourselves what happened in the film. And there seems to be some kind of subculture that supports Brahms in general, where they're fans of Brahms, that they really like the way that he was, that they actually kind of ship him, if you will.
They like romanticize him. This guy who lives in the walls. Like, I'm not saying Brahms isn't like jacked. When he comes out that wall, like, you get a good chest shot and he's got nice hair. But he's like...
He's living in the walls, though!
He's a weirdo who's been living in the walls. You don't romanticize him.
He's like in his 30s and he's got a child's voice, and like all the comments that we could see were something along the lines of like, I really fancy him. What if he's hot underneath the mask, which is bizarre. But then if you take that as the boys' core audience, they were the ones that would be most interested when Brahms The Boy 2 comes out.
Yeah, because he was the real Brahms. So naming this film Brahms and then bringing out the film, which, spoiler, doesn't have Brahms in it. It has the doll. Because
he died in the first one, so they call the second one Brahms The Boy 2. But he's not in the second film because he's dead. So why is the film called Brahms when Brahms isn't even in it? I had low expectations for it being a horror film, and then within the very first minute, my low expectations were exceeded, or the opposite of exceeded. Whatever could be worse, because there was jump scares less than a minute into the film.
I'm home. Jude. Gotcha.
Oh, you bastard!
Yeah, I think for me, the film, I was expecting it to be bad funny. Like, you got Katie Holmes. They've completely rewritten the whole first one. I expected it to just be bad funny, but it doesn't really get that crazy for me to find it funny. I think it was a little bit... I just got a bit annoyed with it, kind of the same way I get annoyed with The Nun. I just felt it was a bit lazy.
It was lazy. I was bored and frustrated, and the fact that like so many people worked on a film just like this, that by the time that there's so many jump scares in this film that aren't jump scares, if you understand what I mean, where like it turns out to be somebody else. It's like when you hate your tropes when somebody comes up to somebody and puts their arm on them and they go, oh fuck, you've scared me.
The amount of times people do that here.
It's exactly the same as this. Within a minute, the kid's jumping out at his mum and trying to scare her, but everything's fine, don't worry about it. And numerous times throughout the film, things seem creepy when they turn out to not be creepy, and it's just...
But that's the thing, the biggest issue with the film is they take the lazy route out where they have dream sequences. They do that thing where the only horror in the film is a dream sequence. Well, so there's no rules.
The only real horror in the film so far was the mother Liza has quite a scary home invasion, which is some real terror. Yeah. She has like flashes, and
traumatized from it.
While we were watching the film, we were trying to predict that whether or not all these spooky things that were happening with the doll, because we know the doll isn't a real supernatural doll. We're just in her mind because she's only on her own in the room.
But yeah, it's shit like the doll turns its head, and you're like, is that in her head or is that actually happening? But then again, we know the doll's not supernatural because we've watched the first one.
So we're watching it thinking she's crazy. She's had the bang on the head. It's all in her mind, sort of thing. And then the film starts throwing us curveballs where more than twice she has a nightmare and is woken up by her family members, and it's not what she expected. But then during the second one, she's having a nightmare inside a nightmare.
Nightmareception. They just went, that'll be creepy, let's put that in.
Which frustrates me, thinking that Hollywood films can just throw this out there and expect the audience to just lap it up. I'm just as confused as the characters were.
Why am I here?
They're just...
Katie Holmes, when she gets twatted with that statue in the first 5 minutes... I thought she's out of the film now. I thought she was dead as well. She was just getting paid to be in the first 5 minutes. She was like, I ain't being in this. But she really needs to talk to her agent, because what's she doing? I know she's used to like tiny men, but weird tiny men.
So after the home invasion, Liza's son Jude seems to be suffering a lot worse with his PTSD. He's become mute. He communicates through drawings and writing, which I don't know about you, but that is the most irritating way that you can portray a character in a film.
What was was there any reason that he was mute?
Because he was terrified of the home invasion.
Like, in terms of the plot.
No, it was purely just a device for him to be able to whisper to Brahms creepily.
Do you reckon they only put that in just so that the parents kept the doll? Because the only reason they keep the doll is because they think it's helping with his trauma.
No, the only reason they keep the doll is because their therapist says, remember that doll that you dug up in the forest? Yeah, it's good for your son. I'd keep hold of that if I was you.
Yeah.
Which is the worst advice I've ever heard a therapist give anyone.
Gross.
Remember that litter that you picked up outside? Yeah, keep all of that in your house. Rub it in your kid's face. Maybe he'll start speaking.
It's the same with the film Mute. Like, Mute is an awful film. But it's yet again where the protagonist is mute, but there's no reason why. They don't use it in the film. There's no moment where, like, the kid sees Brahms in the walls or something and then can't tell his mum because he can't say it. There's no moment like that. So why is he mute? It's just people not giving a shit writing it. They wrote it and just thought, bugger it, let's just put that in.
They thought not speaking kid, that's creepy, and then the whispers as well.
There's a real life story that they've based this on. It's if you ever watch the program Law or listen to the podcast Law, there's a real story that's in America where a little kid had a doll and then he got proper obsessed with it his whole life, and now it's in a museum somewhere and you gotta like ask to take its photo because it's creepy. So people do love that, so you can see why they've tried to do that with this. It's the same with Annabelle. They've tried to take like a real life story and put it on, but the issue with this one is that wasn't in the first film. They've already made a film about something else. You can't just tack that on now.
So they move out to the countryside on the advice of the therapist. They need to get some space where he feels safe. So for some reason the family decide to pitch up and move into some kind of Airbnb country manor in a place that they've never been to before, and allow a strange man walking in the grounds to chat to their son frequently when he's on his own in the garden.
I know, and he's always carrying around a big gun as well. I'd be like, anyone with a shotgun, no, it's not coming near me.
Yeah, openly carrying around with his rifle. Played by Ralph Ineson, which we're actually really big fans of Ralph Ineson. I felt like when they decided to start putting the cast together, they moved the locale from the film from the city up to the north, which is like some area between kind of...
It's like Yorkshire.
Like Yorkshire, Lancashire,
kind of
sort of...
bad Yorkshire accents.
I can't think, like, they must be like Yorkshire accents for the rest of the world, because they've got that kind of Yorkshire accent, but they enunciate every word, so it sounds really weird. It's like, oh, I've got a little bit of a... Who's this little man? Is he out having a good day? And it's like, that wouldn't be what it sounds like.
The whole film pissed me off because it was like plagued with bad accents. The guy who plays Sean, the husband, he's got the awful British accent that he just puts all the way through. You thought it was Australian for the first
I did think it was Australian.
And then I think it dips into like British, Australian. It's like, it's well annoying.
It became apparent he wasn't Australian.
What's up, mate? You being the big man of the house and taking care of your mum.
But Ralph Ineson, he must have just been top of the list of actors that have been in recent horror films that speak with a northern accent, and just must have gone, we have to get this man in.
I know, I don't know how they got him. I feel sorry for him. I don't know,
I haven't got there yet.
He shouldn't have been in this.
Already they've put this child into like a dodgy position where they're supposed to be putting them in a place that they feel safe, but now they're living in a country manor.
In the middle of nowhere.
In the middle
as
of nowhere
well.
that they've never been to before. And they, on the first day, they decide to go for a walk where they find the doll and they dig him up and then they take him home and then they clean him.
Yeah, there's a weird, like, it's filmed like an autopsy.
It's like Toy Story 2, but like, it's for Brahms. It's a Victorian porcelain doll that they
But
found
she
in the
like
woods.
really slowly takes his little clothes off, and it's like it's really uncomfortable. And you said you think he's got bigger in this. He looks more like
He's a lot
lifestyle.
bigger. I don't know what age that Jude is supposed to be. He's played by somebody who's definitely 13 or 14 years
Yeah,
old.
I think it's some kind of teenager.
But he's got this unhealthy obsession with this doll that's almost the size of him. I still can't get over it. Can we talk about how the fact that Brahms the doll is still about? Because in the first film, he's smashed to pieces, literally to dust. It's porcelain. It cracks into like a million pieces.
They do a scene where they show him putting him back together, and it's like the smallest little bits of cracks in his face.
It would have made more sense if they just got another doll. If they had like more than one doll, it would make more sense because we know that the doll's not supernatural.
There could be one that's like slightly burnt, like it came from a factory, like a creepy factory, and these were the last two that were ever made or something, and she had one in the cupboard.
I think if you total up the amount of shots from the first film and the second film of how many shots just end up having something creepy happen and then the shot lingers on the doll just sitting in a room on his own with ominous music in the background, that must be more than half an hour.
But how is it creepy? The doll does nothing. You could put the doll in a room with someone, it doesn't do anything. It's the demon or whatever, the thing behind the doll.
For like the next 30 minutes, the film is just filled with stupid shit, like Brahms kills Jude's other teddy and cuts him to
he
pieces.
gets revenge on his other toys.
It's like Funzo from The Simpsons because he destroys like other...
He leaves his little legs hanging out over underneath a pillow.
Yeah, it was like finding a corpse. It was like she sees his teddies under the bed, so she goes to pull him out and pulls his leg and realizes it's not attached and the teddy's been completely destroyed. It was almost like...
The horror.
It was like finding a corpse in a horror film, except this is Brahms, the boy too, and it was a teddy that was ripped to pieces.
It's...
More and more apparent it becomes that when Liza is left alone on her own, weird things start happening with the doll. At that point, we're just both sitting there going, well, you know, this is all in her head because she's had that home invasion, she's got PTSD, and that we know that the doll's not real. It's not supernatural.
But that's where it's boring though, because there's no rules. Like, we watch now, it's going, anything could happen, any bloody thing could happen. She could walk over there and it could like turn into some kind of giant creature. Anything could happen because it's all in her head and we know that. And I feel like that's the laziest type of writing. Just making something scary because it's all a dream.
The path that they've taken is just complete garbage.
It's just confusing for no reason. I feel like they threw in the whole home invasion trauma thing at the start just to try and feel like the film's about something more than it is.
They're just plot devices that push the characters out from their environment of being in the city to the countryside to find this doll that inexplicably they decide to keep. They clean and keep.
And the trauma is just a cheap excuse to be able to put horror into the film because they couldn't actually make the doll scary.
One of my highlights of the film so far is it seems that Jude goes over a threshold to be where he becomes so similar to Brahms that one day Liz opens the door and discovers that her son is wearing a suit, just a tiny little suit, just like the doll.
That's one of my favourite things in the film. It's so fucking stupid.
It's the most absurd thing I've ever seen in a film. Point being that where does he get this suit from? Where has he got the suit from? He's not old enough to be, he's hanging around with dolls, he's not old enough to pack his own bags, so his mum's already packed bags for him, so she knows what he's wearing. She just comes in and goes, dinner's in 15 minutes! What?
She says that after she finds a book of drawings of him murdering them in their sleep.
She's like, dinner's in 15. She chooses to tell her husband 2 scenes later. By the time she comes to check the notepad, the page has been ripped out. So I was like, that's your own fucking fault.
It's not even like they're badly drawn either. It's pretty obvious what's going on there.
It was like, oh yeah, mum and dad are gonna die. There's a man and a woman dead on the floor, completely detailed drawings. She refused. She'd rather have dinner.
Me, gun.
This is like O.J. Simpson's. I didn't do it, but this is how I would do it if I did do it.
I did it. Yeah. It ramps up a bit. They realise Ralph Ineson's character Joe is actually called Crazy Joe, who disappeared, but He's been seen down the pub.
Yeah, right.
Sometimes.
Yeah, so the guy explaining who Crazy Joe is in the hospital to Sean basically says that it was owned by Joe, that they call him Crazy Joe, and he disappeared, but he saw him down the pub one time. Right.
So he's back. And he used to owns the house, and he went crazy or something. I feel like they put this in the film purely because they had Ralph and they went, he's damn good. He's too good for this film.
I've seen The Witch, he's pretty damn good.
So they wrote in more scenes for him. I feel like the whole ending, because he doesn't really do much. They don't even talk, he says he has this, like, the doll attaches to people who have trauma, but they don't talk about his trauma. So they clearly didn't write this in prior. So I just feel like they added more scenes with him at the end, just because he's a good actor.
Jude starts to speak again and levels with his mother that Brahms has been speaking to him and he's going to hurt Mum and Dad if he doesn't do what he says. So already there's this kind of alert that the doll might be evil, but everything's kind of put on the back foot still.
With us and our prior knowledge of the first one, we're thinking, okay, Brahms survived, the actual real living human Brahms. We were thinking, oh, he's survived and he's just moved over into this new house and he's living in the walls.
He's manipulating.
And
he's the one who's been flipping the
situation.
table, the big oak table that they've had. He's the one that's been doing all these kind of stuff. He's manipulating the house and everything.
Because it's not obvious that he died in the first one. He gets stabbed by a screwdriver, but it's not...
That's movies though, isn't it? Somebody gets stabbed and falls
dies.
over. We don't know if they die or not.
From what I remember, and I'm not watching it again, I think he got stabbed and then the movie ends. So it's like, in our minds, watching this, we're thinking, okay, Brahms is in the walls. And I'm thinking, how did he get in the walls? This makes no sense all the way through. And then they just completely turn it on its head by trying to do this new twist of actually having a supernatural doll come out of nowhere. She goes on that like antique doll website and finds out the origin of Brahms.
Where?
Which they always do in the films. There's always that bit where someone, I'm amazed they didn't get some actor they could pay for 20 minutes to do it, where they just, search and find out the origin of something.
No, I love the fact that she puts the serial number in that she finds on the doll onto the website and it doesn't come up with anything, and then later on the film she goes back on the website and goes, oh, it was upside down, and then puts it in and finds out all this information about the past owners that had all been brutally killed and murdered and gone crazy.
Every single person who's ever owned him went crazy.
Which, I don't know about you, but that wasn't explained in the first film at all. They've thrown this in to this film, like, with a fifth of the film left to run. Liza manages to successfully escape from Crazy Joe and goes on the hunt to find Jude and Brahms, who are apparently up at the big house.
He's in the big house!
She makes it into the house and finds Jude in the basement, and he's wearing Brahms' old mask. He's under this trance, and Sean, the father, sneaks up behind Brahms the doll, who's conveniently sat in a chair watching the proceedings, because of course he fucking is.
That's the only thing he does,
He just sits in chairs and gets placed in chairs that are seemingly appropriately sized for this little boy man. And he smashes his head into pieces once again.
Yeah, again.
Into dust, but we noticed when we were watching it there was something inside of it, wasn't there?
Yeah, in the first one when he gets smashed, it's just hollow. He gets completely dust on the floor. And then in this one, it gets smashed, and there's like some kind of like little burnt body inside of it. I was thinking it's Crazy Joe's, maybe like his trauma was that his son died or something, so he like shoves the corpse in there and
Crazy Joe remade it, didn't he?
Yeah, because he remade it, and he could have put it back together and like kept it because it's like his dead son or something. But I think that was too smart for this movie. And instead, they just went down it's supernatural route.
Jude is broken from the trance. And he's like, I'm not going to shoot your mum now. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know what I was thinking. It was all to do with Brahms. And they turn and look at the doll, and the doll sits upright and turns its head, and it actually is a supernatural doll, which was nothing in the first film. There was no hint of it being that in the first film. It was revealed that it was actually a real person living in the walls by the name of Brahms. But now in this film, inexplicably, for no reason, there is a burnt little crispy fetus inside of the doll that has an asshole for a mouth that is supernatural.
Yeah, it's got like little teeth. It's like I assume it's meant to be a little demon or something. It's some kind of demon. But I'm like, when did that get in the doll? Did that grow in the doll, or was that or did Crazy Joe know that was in there when he was putting it back together? It's like when? And is that why they put out food for it? Does Brahms actually eat, or is that just like what does it do? What does the demon do?
My idea for that was Brahms is living in the walls and he comes and retrieves the food and eat it. because that makes more sense.
Yeah, that's what we
Not
know.
this little demon doll thing
It's an actual
is an
demon.
actual demon doll living inside a porcelain doll.
And he has like powers because he like throws people and shit. It goes all crazy at the end.
The only person that can tell us the stories that would reveal this is Crazy Joe, but he can't now because Brahms lifts him up and kills him with supernatural doll powers. The dust settles and Jude once again has Brahms in his arms and he stood in front of the furnace. And I thought, right, they're going to do like some sort of serious anti-ending. Jude's going to throw himself into the flames with the doll and they're going to be friends forever. And I thought, that would be cool. That would be the twist ending that redeems the film. And I'd be like, yeah, no way. Like, you know, they'd go down that path of actually having a child burned to death. But Jude repels the psychic control over him and just throws the doll in the furnace and it burns to death while it watches through the flames.
Do you know what though? Because he says to Brahms, he says something like, "Tell me what you want me to do," or "What do you want me to do?" And then he throws him in the furnace. So I'm assuming that's leaving it open for another one, because it's going to be like Brahms' spirit escaped and it took over the form of another. It's got to be some kind of bullshit where it goes.
If you manage,
the point of this one was clearly to set it up for other ones like the Annabelle series.
if you manage to watch it till the end of the film, turns out Jude took Brahms' mask that he found in the cupboard of the house.
Oh yeah, there's
that was
that
wearing
as
about.
well.
Yeah, we haven't even touched on that. He takes the mask from the house and decides to just pop it on and speaks to himself in the mirror, saying something along the lines of like, "We'll be together forever, Brahms." So Brahms is a spirit now living on inside Jude. But
Yes, that's what it is. That's what it is. He threw him in the furnace, and then that's what he wanted, because then he moulded with Brahms. They became one. Because Joe says to him,
you're doing too much work for the filmmakers.
Yeah, this is it.
You're doing the work for the filmmakers when the filmmakers should be
They didn't
conveying that in the
write this,
film,
yeah.
and then they haven't done. They've just fucking threw some shit together and expected people to go, "Oh!"
It's because Joe says something stupid like Brahms and Jude are one now or some shit before this whole scene goes
He's
down.
safer than they've always been.
Yeah, it's.
He's in the big house.
But because I remember thinking that's a bit weird when he's saying about them being one. I was like, ugh. So yeah, that's what it is. He's turned into him, and that. But how that doesn't?
No, nothing makes sense.
Yeah, but that doesn't set up another one. What are we going to go to then? Is the next one going to be Jude living in someone's wall, so all the people on the internet can get hot over that?
I tell you what, if there is going to be a Boy 3, Brahms 3, or Jude Brahms, Jude Brahms, the Boy 3 2.5 in space. It didn't make sense. It's not even like it's a badly, a badly made film. I can criticize films for being like confusing, overcomplicated, like bad technical effects sort of thing. This one, just straight down to the core, just did not make sense. The premise didn't make sense. The setup didn't make sense. The extended history of the film being the original doesn't cross over to this film to make sense for this second film, which is a sequel.
No, I think for me, the main reason we watched this, it was just the audacity of them to make this, and just to think that the audience is this stupid. It's like, no, we're gonna see through cash grabs like this. It's like, you can't just do it. You can't just write shit like that.
I'm looking forward to seeing how the actual core fans of this film, God love them, whoever they are or whatever they are, how they react to this film, because
There's no Brahms.
Brahms wasn't in it. I don't know why it's called Brahms. Brahms is inside the doll now.
That's what it is. Brahms is in the doll now. That's what.
But it doesn't explain how he
That's
got
what the
in
little
there.
demon thing
Yeah,
is.
but how is the full-grown, big 30-year-old man-child that's living in the wall been stuffed inside a porcelain doll?
'Cause
It doesn't make
he's
any sense.
evil.
That will be what the explanation is. It'll be like his evil was so powerful it decided to
But you know what?
manifest itself inside of the doll. But that makes no sense. If I could describe this film, it would have to be something along the lines of, I'd have to separate it from a critical evaluation of it as something entertaining because it's so dumb. Quite a few times I was giggling. Like
It's not the worst horror.
the reveal of Jude wearing a suit the same as Little Brahms was possibly one of the funniest moments in cinema I've ever had in my life. But the more I thought about this film and the way that it was set up and the way that it doesn't try to explain anything, it just piles on more extended lore and things that we'll never get to solve, will never be explained. We just have to accept it. This film ranges somewhere along the lines of a dull pain in the testicles for me. Like a lump that you probably should get checked out, and it's not.
Yeah, but then you keep poking because you're interested.
No, when the third one arrives.
I didn't like the first film, and this one is just more of the same predictable trash. Like, I would not have watched this one if it hadn't been for the trailer. That just absolutely shocked me when I saw it, because I was like, I'm sorry, what? What are you doing? That was the only reason I watched it. I was not interested in anyway.
That's the human curiosity, though, isn't it? You just, like,
Yeah.
They had the goal to make a second film. What are they going to fill it with? And lo and behold, it was full of shite.
Yeah, so Brahms, I wouldn't recommend this film at all. I wouldn't recommend the first one, and I wouldn't recommend this one.
It drew over its own ideas with Crayola pens.
Like, crappy little drawings that you did.
Yeah, like, you know, you've got, like, I've tried to do a self-portrait and it's half done, and then, like, you come back to it the next day and you just draw...
You forgot what you were doing.
You forgot what you're doing and just draw a big fat dick with a red crayon right over the top of it.
It's not going to be Annabelle as much as it wants to be, as much as the studio clearly wants it to be. This film is not going to do well. I know it's kind of come out... I can't remember if it got a cinema release. I think it just came out before Corona kind of hit. So I think it has had a bit of time to get some money. But it's still not going to get the success that it's hoping for. Trying to cash in on the Annabelle thing, it's not going to work. Okay, overall, I'm going to give it 3 antique doll websites out of 10. What did you think?
I'm going to go with 1 impaled fat kid out of 10. Can't wait for The Boy 3.
I was trying to think of a good title, but then it's just going to be Brahms.
Brahms 3, The Boy 3.
Versus Annabelle.
Brahms versus Annabelle.
You don't. You'll know they're going to do it.
Okay.
He's in the big house.